The Red Sea, once a vital artery of civilization, is now a war zone. Missiles streak across the night, explosions lighting up headlines. Houthi rebels attack another commercial ship. Global trade under siege. From Yemen's mountains, the Houthis have turned this historic shipping lane into a battleground, targeting vessels in solidarity with Palestinians and disrupting global commerce. The Bab el-Mandeb, the Gate of Tears, is now a choke point for the world economy as navies scramble to contain the threat. A small, battle-hardened group has managed to hold global trade hostage, proving that disruption can rival the power to build. Who are the Houthis and how did they become a global menace? Born from Yemen's marginalized Zaidi community, their rise is a story of religious identity, political grievance, and regional power struggles. Are they acting alone, or as proxies for Iran in a wider shadow war? Their motives, solidarity with Palestine or strategic leverage for Iran, are key to understanding whether this crisis can be diffused or will escalate. To find answers, we must explore their origins, alliances, and the global consequences of their maritime war. In Yemen's northern highlands, the Houthis emerged from the Zaidi community's sense of betrayal and marginalization. Hussein al-Houthi, their founder, rallied followers against government corruption and foreign influence, igniting a rebellion in 2004. The government's crackdown only fueled their resolve, and Hussein's death made him a martyr. His brother Abdul Malik took command, transforming the movement into a resilient insurgency. Forged in conflict, the Houthis' identity became inseparable from their fight against a state they saw as corrupt and oppressive. After their founder's death, the Houthis, now Ansar Allah, became a formidable force, mastering guerrilla warfare and expanding beyond their Zaidi base. They tapped into Yemen's widespread discontent, promising to fight corruption and foreign interference. The Arab Spring gave them a national platform. They joined protests, gained influence in Sana'a, and positioned themselves as revolutionaries. But the post-Saleh transition left them sidelined, and a proposed federal system threatened their power. Feeling betrayed, they chose force over politics, setting the stage for a dramatic power grab. In 2014, the Houthis seized Sana'a, aided by a secret alliance with ex-President Saleh and his loyalists. Their takeover shocked the region, prompting Saudi Arabia to launch a military intervention in 2015. The war became a humanitarian catastrophe, but the Houthis endured relentless airstrikes and blockade. Instead of collapsing, they solidified control over northern Yemen, emerging as a battle-hardened force. Now their fight has spilled from Yemen's mountains to the Red Sea, threatening global trade and security. The Houthis' remarkable staying power and military sophistication cannot be explained by their own resources alone. Their transformation from a local insurgency into a force capable of challenging global powers is deeply intertwined with their most crucial international partner, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Tehran views the Houthis as a vital component of its axis of resistance, a network of state and non-state actors across the Middle East dedicated to opposing American, Israeli, and Saudi influence. This alliance includes groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias in Iraq, and the government of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. By supporting the Houthis, Iran extends this axis to the strategically vital Arabian Peninsula, gaining a foothold right on the doorstep of its chief regional rival, Saudi Arabia. This relationship is not just ideological, it is a deeply strategic partnership that serves both parties' interests. For Iran, the benefits of this alliance are immense. It allows Tehran to project power far beyond its own borders at a relatively low cost, bogging down its Saudi adversaries in a costly and draining war in Yemen. By providing weapons, training, and strategic guidance, Iran can exert significant pressure on Riyadh and threaten the critical shipping lanes of the Red Sea. This gives Iran a powerful lever to pull in its broader geopolitical struggle with the West. The Houthi movement provides a perfect platform for this proxy warfare. It is a homegrown movement with its own legitimate local grievances, which gives Tehran a degree of plausible deniability. Iran can claim it is merely offering political and moral support to an oppressed group, all while quietly arming them to the teeth. From the Houthi perspective, the alliance with Iran is a matter of survival and empowerment. Facing a powerful US-backed Saudi-led coalition, Ansar Allah desperately needed a powerful patron, and Shia-led Iran was a natural fit. While Zaydism differs from Iran's Twelver Shia Islam, the shared anti-imperialist, anti-American, and anti-Saudi worldview created a strong bond. Iran provides the Houthis with the advanced military technology and expertise they need to not only defend their territory, but also to strike back hard against their enemies. This support has elevated them from a guerrilla force into a de facto state actor with a formidable arsenal, capable of launching sophisticated attacks hundreds of kilometers away. It has given them the strength to withstand years of war and blockade. This strategic marriage began to deepen significantly after the Saudi intervention in 2015. As the war intensified, so did Iran's support. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, particularly its elite Quds force, which is responsible for foreign operations, allegedly took the lead in orchestrating this assistance. While the exact routes and methods are clandestine, intelligence reports from the US, the UN, and various Western nations have detailed a complex network of smuggling operations. Weapons and components are said to be transported by sea on small dhows, often disguised as fishing vessels, making their way across the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Oman to the Yemeni coast, where they are offloaded and moved inland, far from the prying eyes of coalition warships. The impact of Iranian assistance on the Houthis' military capabilities has been nothing short of transformational. Before their alliance with Tehran deepened, the Houthis primarily relied on small arms, rocket-propelled grenades, and tactics typical of a mountain-based insurgency. However, the post-2015 battlefield has seen them deploy an increasingly sophisticated and diverse arsenal that bears the clear hallmarks of Iranian design and technology. This includes a vast array of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones, from small explosive-laden suicide drones that can be launched in swarms, to larger surveillance models capable of guiding missile strikes. These systems have allowed the Houthis to see over the horizon and strike targets with a precision they previously could only dream of. Even more alarming for their adversaries has been the rapid development of the Houthis' ballistic and cruise missile program. They have unveiled a series of missiles such as the Quds and Burkan families, which are widely believed by military analysts to be derivatives or direct copies of Iranian models. These weapons have given the Houthis the ability to strike deep inside Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, targeting critical infrastructure like airports, oil facilities, and even capital cities. The technological leap from rudimentary rockets to guided ballistic missiles capable of traveling over 1,000 kilometers is one that cannot be achieved without significant external assistance, pointing directly to the transfer of technology, components, and know-how from Iran. The maritime domain is where this Iranian support has now manifested as a global threat. The Houthis have developed a potent anti-ship capability, employing a variety of weapons to terrorize Red Sea shipping. This includes anti-ship cruise missiles, which can skim low over the water to evade radar detection, as well as naval mines and explosive-laden remote-controlled boats, known as waterborne improvised explosive devices, or WBAIDs. These drone boats are particularly dangerous, capable of being guided at high speed into the hulls of much larger vessels. The tactics and technology are strikingly similar to those used by the IRGC in the Persian Gulf, suggesting a direct transfer of both equipment and operational doctrine from Iranian trainers to their Houthi protégés. This lethal arsenal has effectively turned the Houthis from a land-based force into a formidable hybrid military power with influence over land, air, and sea. The training provided by Iran's IRGC and its Lebanese ally, Hezbollah, has been just as critical as the hardware. Experts from both organizations are believed to have traveled to Yemen to advise Houthi commanders on strategy, help assemble sophisticated weapons systems from smuggled parts, and train local fighters in their use. This comprehensive support package has enabled Ansar Allah to wage a high-tech, asymmetric war against a coalition of some of the best-equipped militaries in the world, demonstrating a level of battlefield innovation and resilience that has surprised and frankly alarmed international observers. The Iran-Houthi alliance has fundamentally altered the strategic balance in the Middle East, transforming the Yemeni civil war into a critical front in a much larger regional shadow war. Every Houthi missile launched at Riyadh or Abu Dhabi, and every drone attack on a ship in the Red Sea serves Tehran's broader strategic goals. It demonstrates Iran's ability to challenge its rivals indirectly, forcing them to spend billions on defense and creating a constant state of insecurity. This proxy strategy allows Iran to bleed its adversaries without risking a direct conventional war that it would likely lose. The Houthis in this context are not merely rebels in a civil war, they are the tip of Iran's spear, pointed directly at the heart of the Arabian Peninsula. This proxy conflict has created a dangerous cycle of escalation. Every successful Houthi attack using advanced weaponry prompts a furious response from the Saudi-led coalition and its Western backers, often in the form of intensified airstrikes on Yemen. These strikes, in turn, fuel Houthi resolve and are used as justification for further retaliatory attacks, which are often enabled by more Iranian support. This deadly feedback loop makes any diplomatic solution incredibly difficult to achieve. The conflict is no longer just about the future of Yemen. It is now inextricably linked to the wider geopolitical contest between the Iran-led axis of resistance and the US-Saudi-Israeli bloc, with the Yemeni people caught tragically in the middle. The attacks on international shipping since late 2023 represent a significant and dangerous evolution of this proxy strategy. By empowering the Houthis to disrupt the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, Iran has shown that it can hold a crucial artery of the global economy hostage. This move serves multiple purposes. It punishes Israel's allies for their support during the Gaza conflict. It creates a major distraction and security headache for the United States Navy. And it demonstrates the power and reach of Iran's network of proxies. It is a calculated act of strategic coercion, designed to show the world that conflicts in the Middle East will have direct and painful consequences for the global economy, forcing international powers to reckon with Iran's influence. Ultimately, the Iranian backing of the Houthis is a textbook case of 21st century asymmetric warfare, where a major power leverages a local actor to achieve its strategic aims while maintaining a veneer of deniability. This relationship has turned a marginalized rebel group into a military force that has fought a regional superpower to a standstill and now poses a direct challenge to international maritime freedom. It has prolonged a devastating war, deepened regional rivalries, and exported instability from the mountains of Yemen to the high seas. Understanding this crucial alliance is key to understanding why the conflict has become so intractable and why its shockwaves are now being felt in ports and markets all around the world. In late 2023, the long smouldering war in Yemen erupted onto the global stage in a dramatic new theater of operations: the open sea. The Houthis, declaring their solidarity with the Palestinians in the Gaza conflict, announced they would target any vessel in the Red Sea that was linked to Israel or heading to its ports. What followed was an unprecedented campaign of maritime attacks that turned one of the world's most vital waterways into a high-risk combat zone. Commercial ships, the behemoths that carry the lifeblood of the global economy, suddenly found themselves in the crosshairs. Night after night, distress calls echoed across the waves as missiles, drones, and armed commandos targeted tankers, container ships, and bulk carriers, sowing chaos and fear along this critical maritime corridor. The attacks were brazen and relentless. They began with the dramatic hijacking of the Galaxy Leader, a vehicle carrier, where Houthi commandos descended from a helicopter onto the ship's deck in a professionally executed raid, filming the entire operation for propaganda purposes. This shocking event was just the beginning. The campaign quickly escalated to include near-daily barrages of anti-ship ballistic missiles and swarms of explosive-laden drones. Vessels from numerous nations, many with no direct link to Israel, were targeted or had near misses. The clear message was that no ship was truly safe. The Houthis were demonstrating, with terrifying clarity, their newfound power to disrupt the very fabric of international trade at a moment's notice. The strategic logic behind this maritime assault is multifaceted. On one level, it is a powerful act of political theatre, designed to bolster the Houthis' credibility and popularity across the Arab and Muslim world as defenders of the Palestinian cause. It positions them as the only Arab force willing to take direct military action against Israeli interests and their Western allies. On another level, it is a calculated strategic move to exert maximum leverage on the international community. By threatening the flow of commerce through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a choke point through which nearly 12% of global trade passes, the Houthis forced the world to pay attention to them and the war in Yemen, a conflict that had largely fallen from global headlines. This campaign effectively transformed a civil war into an international crisis. The Houthis proved that a relatively small, non-state group could project significant power far beyond its own shores, holding global commerce hostage to its political demands. They weaponized geography, exploiting the vulnerability of the narrow strait to create a disproportionate impact. Their actions were not random acts of piracy, they were carefully coordinated military operations designed to send a clear and unambiguous signal. The message was that the security of the Red Sea was now directly tied to the conflicts of the wider region, and the era of safe passage through these ancient waters could no longer be taken for granted. The effectiveness of the Houthi maritime campaign stems from a diverse and surprisingly sophisticated arsenal of asymmetric weapons, much of it believed to be supplied or designed by their Iranian patrons. The most common tools of their trade are unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. These are relatively cheap, difficult to detect, and can be launched from mobile sites deep inside Yemen. The Houthis employ several types, from Shahed-style loitering munitions that act as one-way suicide drones, packed with explosives and flown directly into their targets, to more advanced surveillance drones that can spot potential targets and provide real-time targeting data for missile crews. This aerial capability allows them to extend their reach far out into the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Alongside their drone fleet, the Houthis have deployed a formidable array of anti-ship missiles. This includes both cruise missiles, which fly low and fast over the water to evade radar, and, more alarmingly, anti-ship ballistic missiles. The use of ballistic missiles against moving targets at sea is a capability possessed by only a handful of nations, most notably China and Iran, and its appearance in the Houthi arsenal is a stark indicator of the level of external support they have received. These missiles, such as the Tankil, can be launched from hundreds of kilometers inland, arcing high into the atmosphere before descending on their targets at incredible speeds, making them extremely difficult for naval air defense systems to intercept in time. Perhaps the most insidious and unpredictable threat comes from their naval assets. The Houthis have utilized fast attack craft crewed by armed commandos for hijackings and harassment, but their most dangerous weapon is the waterborne improvised explosive device or drone boat. These are small, unmanned speedboats packed with a large quantity of explosives and guided remotely towards their target. They are low profile, fast, and highly maneuverable, designed to slam into the waterline of a large commercial vessel or warship, causing catastrophic damage. These drone boats represent a lethal, low-cost method of threatening even the most well-defended ships, a tactic honed by Iran's IRGC in the Persian Gulf and now perfected by their allies in Yemen. This multi-layered arsenal allows the Houthis to conduct complex, coordinated attacks. They can launch a swarm of drones to overwhelm a ship's defenses, followed by a volley of cruise or ballistic missiles to deliver the killing blow. This combination of high-tech weaponry and guerrilla tactics makes them an incredibly challenging adversary for the international naval forces tasked with protecting the shipping lanes. The Houthis have demonstrated an ability to learn and adapt, constantly refining their tactics to counter the defensive measures deployed against them. Their diverse and lethal toolkit has successfully transformed the Red Sea from a global highway into a perilous gauntlet for any vessel that dares to pass. The Houthi attacks on shipping did more than just damage a few vessels. They sent a powerful shockwave through the entire global economy. The Red Sea, connected to the Mediterranean via the Suez Canal, is one of the most critical arteries of world trade. It is the shortest and fastest maritime route between Asia and Europe, and its disruption has immediate and far-reaching consequences. In response to the escalating threat, the world's largest shipping companies, including giants like Maersk, MSC, and Hapag-Lloyd, made the drastic decision to suspend all transit through the Red Sea. They had no choice but to reroute their massive fleets around the entire continent of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope. This sudden rerouting has created logistical chaos and immense financial strain. The journey around Africa adds between 3,000 and 3,500 nautical miles, or about 9 to 14 days, to a typical voyage between Asia and Europe. This extra time at sea translates directly into staggering costs. Shipping companies face millions of dollars in additional fuel expenses for each rerouted vessel. The longer transit times mean that ships can make fewer journeys per year, effectively reducing the global shipping capacity and driving up freight rates for everyone. These costs are inevitably passed down the supply chain, from the manufacturers to the retailers, and ultimately to consumers in the form of higher prices for imported goods. The economic impact extends far beyond simple shipping costs. The delays have caused severe disruptions to finely tuned just-in-time global supply chains. Factories in Europe that rely on timely deliveries of components from Asia have been forced to halt production. Car manufacturers like Tesla and Volvo had to announce temporary shutdowns of their European plants due to a shortage of parts. The delays also affect perishable goods and create uncertainty throughout the market. Furthermore, maritime insurance premiums for any companies still willing to risk the Red Sea route have skyrocketed, with war risk surcharges increasing by thousands of %, adding another layer of expense and complication to global trade. The crisis has exposed the profound fragility of our interconnected global economic system. It demonstrates how a regional actor, using relatively low-cost asymmetric tactics, can inflict billions of dollars in economic damage and disrupt the daily lives of people thousands of miles away. The Houthi campaign is a stark reminder that geopolitical instability in one choke point can have a cascading effect across the world, fueling inflation, threatening energy security, and challenging the very principles of freedom of navigation upon which modern commerce depends. The war on the Red Sea is not just a military conflict. It is a full-blown economic assault with consequences for us all. As the Houthi attacks intensified and the arteries of global trade began to clot, the international community was forced to act. The United States, whose Navy has long served as the guarantor of maritime security, swiftly moved to assemble a military response. In December 2023, Washington announced the formation of Operation Prosperity Guardian, a multinational security initiative aimed at protecting commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Under this banner, a formidable armada of American, British, and other allied warships converged on the region. Their mission was clear: to patrol the vulnerable shipping lanes, restore freedom of navigation, and counter the Houthi threat directly through defensive action. The placid waters of the Red Sea were now patrolled by the grey hulls of guided missile destroyers. The initial phase of the operation was purely defensive. Advanced naval vessels equipped with sophisticated radar and Aegis combat systems created a protective shield over the transit corridor. Day and night, these warships engaged in high-stakes combat, launching their own multi-million-dollar missiles to intercept incoming Houthi drones and anti-ship projectiles. The skies over the Red Sea became a new kind of battlefield, a deadly game of cat and mouse played out between Houthi launch sites on land and the defenders at sea. While the coalition successfully thwarted dozens of attacks, preventing many ships from being hit, the sheer volume and persistence of the Houthi barrages made it clear that a purely defensive posture was unsustainable and insufficient to deter the rebels. Faced with the Houthis' continued defiance, the United States and the United Kingdom decided to escalate. In January 2024, they shifted from defense to offense, launching a series of coordinated air and missile strikes against Houthi targets inside Yemen. With support from a handful of other allies, they targeted command and control centers, weapons depots, missile launch sites, and radar installations. These strikes were designed to degrade the Houthis' capacity to conduct further attacks, to take away the bow and arrow, as military officials described it. The international response had crossed a significant threshold, moving from protecting ships to actively trying to dismantle the military infrastructure of the group, threatening them. The strikes represented a direct military intervention in Yemen's complex conflict, a step many had been reluctant to take. The bombing campaign was a powerful show of force, intended to send a clear message to the Houthis and their Iranian backers that their actions would have severe consequences. However, the rebels, hardened by nearly a decade of war against the Saudi-led coalition, were not easily intimidated. They absorbed the blows, vowing revenge and promising to expand their campaign. The Western powers found themselves drawn deeper into a conflict with a resilient and determined foe, one who viewed the confrontation as a badge of honor and a confirmation of their anti-imperialist struggle. While Operation Prosperity Guardian was presented as a broad international coalition, its composition revealed significant caution and division among global and regional powers. Although the United States took the lead, securing public support from the United Kingdom and France, the response from other key nations was notably lukewarm. Crucially, major regional Arab powers, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who had spent years fighting the Houthis, chose to keep a low profile, fearing direct involvement could derail a fragile truce in Yemen and make their infrastructure vulnerable to renewed Houthi attacks. They largely remained on the sidelines, offering quiet intelligence support at most. This reluctance highlighted the complex political tightrope that regional states are walking. After years of costly and inconclusive war, Saudi Arabia has been engaged in delicate peace talks with the Houthis, seeking a permanent exit from the Yemeni quagmire. Joining a US-led military operation would have shattered that process and risked dragging Riyadh back into direct conflict. For them, the risk of reigniting war on their southern border outweighed the benefits of joining the coalition. This hesitance underscored growing divergence between American and Gulf Arab priorities, with regional leaders favoring de-escalation and diplomacy over military confrontation. Even among European nations, there was a lack of complete unity. While Britain participated directly in strikes and France deployed its warships, other maritime powers like Spain and Italy declined to place assets under US command. Instead, the European Union launched its own separate naval mission, named Aspides, Greek for shields. This parallel operation had a strictly defensive mandate, focused solely on escorting commercial vessels and protecting them from attack, without participating in offensive strikes on Yemeni soil. This split reflected European concerns about being drawn into wider US-led conflict and desire to maintain strategic autonomy from Washington's more muscular approach. The fragmented nature of the global response ultimately played into the Houthis' hands. It allowed them to portray the conflict not as confrontation with the world, but as heroic struggle against American and British aggression in support of Palestine. The lack of a unified front, particularly the absence of key Arab states, weakened political and diplomatic pressure on the rebels and their Iranian patrons. The Houthis could continue their attacks, confident the international community was too divided to mount overwhelming and unified campaign that would force them to stand down, leaving the standoff to fester. The global response, particularly the United States and United Kingdom airstrikes, has created a dangerous and unpredictable military standoff in the Red Sea region. The central dilemma for Western powers is how to calibrate their response to be strong enough to deter the Houthis without triggering a much wider regional war. Each strike on Yemeni soil carries the risk of unintended consequences, potentially drawing in Iran more directly or collapsing the fragile truce in the broader Yemeni civil war, which could plunge the country back into full-scale conflict and, honestly, exacerbate its catastrophic humanitarian crisis. The Houthis have proven they are not easily deterred by limited military action, forcing a difficult choice between accepting the ongoing disruption or risking a major escalation. For the Houthis, this confrontation is a strategic windfall. They have successfully elevated their status from a domestic rebel group to a major regional player confronting global superpowers. The Western strikes are used as powerful propaganda, reinforcing their narrative of resistance and rallying support both at home and across the Arab world. They have shown a remarkable ability to withstand the attacks, continuing to launch drones and missiles despite the coalition's efforts. This resilience has put the United States and its allies in a strategic bind. Continuing the strikes risks a quagmire, but stopping them would be seen as a victory for the Houthis, emboldening them and other proxy groups to challenge international norms. The risk of a wider regional conflict, honestly, looms large over the entire situation. Iran, the Houthis' primary benefactor, is carefully watching from the sidelines. While Tehran has avoided direct involvement, a significant escalation against its Yemeni allies could provoke a stronger response. This could take the form of increased weapons shipments to the Houthis, or encouraging its other proxies in Iraq and Syria to step up attacks on United States forces in the region. The standoff in the Red Sea is intrinsically linked to the wider shadow war between Iran and the United States-Israeli alliance, and any major miscalculation by either side could ignite a chain reaction that engulfs the entire Middle East in flames. The world is now witnessing a perilous stalemate. The coalition warships continue their patrols, intercepting attacks and launching periodic strikes, while the Houthis continue their campaign, adapting their tactics and, frankly, daring the West to go further. Shipping remains severely disrupted, with global supply chains still feeling the strain. Neither side appears willing or able to back down, creating a tense new normal of sustained low-level conflict in one of the world's most critical waterways. The global response has managed to contain the threat but has so far failed to eliminate it, leaving the world economy vulnerable and the region teetering on the brink of a much larger and more destructive war. The Houthi campaign in the Red Sea is far more than a regional security issue. It is a direct assault on the arteries of the global economy. The stakes could not be higher. In an era where global supply chains are already brittle, still recovering from the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, this new crisis introduces a level of instability that the world can ill afford. The rerouting of ships around Africa is not a sustainable solution, but a costly, temporary patch that generates its own set of problems. Every additional week a container ship spends at sea is a week that delays vital components for factories, finished goods for store shelves, and essential resources for entire nations. This friction in the system acts as a tax on global trade, a tax that is ultimately paid by everyone. The most immediate and tangible consequence is the threat of resurgent inflation. For months, central banks around the world have been engaged in a delicate battle to bring down soaring prices. The Houthi attacks threaten to undo that progress. Higher shipping and insurance costs are inevitably passed on to consumers, pushing up the price of everything from electronics and clothing to food and fuel. For economies in Europe and Asia, which are particularly dependent on the Suez Canal route, the impact is especially severe. The disruption adds significant pressure to businesses already struggling with high energy costs and slowing growth, creating a perfect storm that could tip fragile economies back towards recession and create renewed economic hardship for millions of households. Beyond consumer goods, the crisis poses a significant threat to global energy security. The Red Sea is a major choke point for the transportation of oil and liquefied natural gas from the Persian Gulf to Europe. While many tankers are now taking the longer route, the disruption and associated risks have caused oil prices to spike on global markets. This volatility creates uncertainty and makes it more difficult for countries to secure the energy supplies they need to power their economies. A sustained period of disruption, or worse, a direct attack on a major oil tanker, could send energy prices soaring, with devastating knock-on effects for industries and consumers across the globe, further fanning the flames of inflation. The crisis also exposes a deeper vulnerability at the heart of our modern, interconnected world. We have built a global economic system, that relies on the flawless, just-in-time delivery of goods across vast distances, assuming that key maritime choke points will always remain open and secure. The Houthi campaign has shattered that assumption. It serves as a stark warning that the infrastructure of globalization is more fragile than we imagined. The ease with which a determined non-state actor can disrupt this system forces corporations and governments to rethink their supply chain strategies, potentially leading to a costlier and less efficient model of global trade, as they seek more resilient but more expensive alternatives. The world is watching because this is a test case for the future of globalization itself. The Houthi war on shipping matters not only for its economic impact, but also for what it signals about the changing character of modern conflict. It is a textbook example of successful asymmetric warfare, where a technologically inferior but highly motivated actor can challenge and inflict significant costs upon vastly superior global powers. The Houthis have demonstrated that with the right strategy, a degree of external support, and a willingness to absorb punishment, it is possible to hold a critical node of the international system hostage. Their success provides a dangerous and compelling blueprint for other aggrieved non-state actors and proxy groups around the world, from the Strait of Hormuz to the Malacca Strait. If the Houthis' campaign is seen to be successful, if they emerge with their status enhanced and their goals achieved without facing crippling consequences, it could embolden other groups to adopt similar tactics. Imagine a world where multiple armed groups feel empowered to target shipping in other critical maritime choke points. The cumulative effect would be catastrophic for global trade and security, leading to a breakdown of the freedom of navigation that has underpinned the global order for decades. The international community's response is therefore being closely watched, not just by its allies, but by its adversaries, who are learning valuable lessons about the West's resolve and its vulnerabilities in this new era of warfare. This crisis also highlights the limits of conventional military power in dealing with unconventional threats. The United States and its allies possess the most advanced navies in human history, yet they have struggled to put a decisive end to the attacks. Launching multi-million-dollar missiles to shoot down $1,000 drones is an economically unsustainable model of defense. At the same time, airstrikes inside Yemen risk a protracted and messy entanglement with a battle-hardened foe who thrives on confrontation. This dilemma reveals a critical gap in the strategic toolkit of major powers who are finding their high-tech, expensive military platforms are not always the right tools for dealing with low-cost, high-impact threats from agile adversaries. Ultimately, the Houthi crisis matters because it is a harbinger of a more chaotic and contested world. It signifies a diffusion of power where the ability to cause massive disruption is no longer the sole preserve of great nations. It underscores the profound impact of regional conflicts and proxy wars on global stability, demonstrating how seemingly distant problems can arrive at our shores in the form of higher prices and empty shelves. Everyone is watching because this is not just a story about Yemen or the Red Sea. It is a story about the fragility of our interconnected world and the new and unpredictable security challenges of the 21st century, where a small group of rebels can change the currents of global trade. The world now finds itself at a critical juncture, watching the turbulent waters of the Red Sea with bated breath. The immediate future is shrouded in uncertainty, balanced on a knife's edge between two starkly different paths, a fragile negotiated peace or a devastating wider war. On one hand, diplomatic channels are working feverishly behind the scenes. The United Nations, along with regional powers like Oman and Saudi Arabia, is pushing for a de-escalation that would untangle the Red Sea crisis from the broader conflict in Yemen. The hope is that a durable ceasefire in Yemen, coupled with progress on a political settlement, could persuade the Houthis to halt their maritime attacks in exchange for legitimacy and a formal role in governing the country. This path offers a potential off-ramp, a way to calm the waters without further bloodshed. However, the path of diplomacy is fraught with immense challenges. The Houthis have tied their attacks explicitly to the war in Gaza, and as long as that conflict rages, they have a powerful justification for continuing their campaign. They are riding a wave of popular support and are unlikely to give up their newfound international prominence easily. For them, the attacks are a source of immense leverage, not just on the world stage, but also in their negotiations over the future of Yemen. Any diplomatic solution would require them to make concessions that they may feel they no longer need to offer, having successfully stood up to the world's greatest military powers and survived. The very success of their campaign makes them less, not more, inclined to compromise. On the other hand, the specter of a much broader military conflict looms ominously. The United States and its allies cannot indefinitely tolerate a situation where a key global trade artery is held hostage. If the Houthi attacks continue to escalate, or if they succeed in sinking a major commercial or naval vessel, the pressure for a much more forceful military response would become immense. This could involve a sustained and punishing air campaign, targeting not just Houthi military assets, but also their leadership and economic infrastructure. Such an escalation would shatter the Yemeni truce, plunge the country into an even deeper humanitarian catastrophe, and risk a direct and unpredictable confrontation with Iran, the Houthis' powerful patron. This is the perilous stalemate in which the world finds itself. The current strategy of limited strikes and defensive patrols has contained the problem but has not solved it. The Houthis have proven they can absorb these attacks and continue their campaign, while the international coalition is wary of being dragged into a new Middle Eastern quagmire. The world now watches Yemen's rebels, a once obscure group that has masterfully leveraged geography and geopolitics to wield an outsized influence over global trade and security. The question of what comes next remains unanswered, hanging heavy in the air like the smoke from a distant explosion, with the fate of the region and the stability of the global economy hanging in the balance. Regardless of how the immediate crisis is resolved, the Houthi war on the Red Sea has already permanently altered the landscape of the Middle East and the dynamics of global trade. It has served as a brutal lesson in the fragility of our interconnected world, proving that the principles of globalization and freedom of navigation cannot be taken for granted. The era of assuming that vital maritime choke points are immune to regional conflicts is over. The Houthis have written a new chapter in the playbook of asymmetric warfare, demonstrating that a determined non-state actor, with the right backing and strategy, can project power far beyond its borders and hold the global economic system to ransom. This is a precedent that will not be forgotten by other groups or their state sponsors. In the long term, this crisis is likely to accelerate a profound rethinking of global supply chains. For decades, the logic of just-in-time manufacturing has prioritized efficiency over resilience, creating a system that is highly optimized but extremely vulnerable to disruption. The Red Sea attacks have exposed the folly of that approach. Corporations and governments will now be forced to build more redundancy into their logistics, diversifying their sourcing of materials, and perhaps even bringing manufacturing closer to home through reshoring or nearshoring. While this may make supply chains more secure, it will also make them more expensive and less efficient, potentially leading to a sustained period of higher costs for consumers and a partial unwinding of the hyperglobalization that has defined the last 30 years. The conflict also signals a significant shift in the balance of power in the Middle East. The Houthis, through their audacious campaign, have cemented their position as a formidable and permanent player in the region. They have successfully defied Saudi Arabia, challenged the United States, and established themselves as a key member of Iran's axis of resistance. Their actions have shown that Iran's proxy network is not just a tool for regional meddling, but a weapon capable of inflicting real pain on the global stage. This crisis has elevated the Houthis from a local Yemeni faction to a force that must be reckoned with in any future security arrangement for the region, forever changing the political calculus for Riyadh, Washington, and Tehran. This is the Houthis' war, but its consequences are universal. It is a conflict that has exposed the vulnerabilities of the modern world and heralded a new, more contested era of geopolitics. It proves that in the 21st century, power is not just measured in aircraft carriers and economic output, but also in the ability to disrupt, to create chaos, and to turn the intricate systems of our interconnected world against themselves. The events in the Red Sea are a clear sign that the old rules no longer apply. A new reality is dawning, one where regional conflicts have immediate global consequences, and where the narrow straits of the world have become the front lines in a new struggle for power and influence.